recording now?
Yeah. So you can just talk to me.
So if I get that's recording.
Yeah, that's all on.
That's not so bad. I don't feel uncomfortable.
That's all right. So
because I started to tell you, I had them on there and I blew it in the garden. And it was when Philip was in the car, and I did the same thing. He said, "Can you take me back to what? As far as I want to know, more or less before the war." He wanted to know that. Just give me a quick idea of
what's your earliest memory?
Yeah, he tried to say that. But in the car, he's got it somewhere. And it ran out on us. And he said, what, can you remember it quite definitely? I don't remember, I'm 52, but I can remember perhaps being 9 or 10. But things were normal when I was 9 or 10. It was in the 60s. But you were 9 or 10 in the Dark Ages, sort of thing. And that's when it started. And I said, I think it's my very, very first memory, which is interesting when you think, well, I won't be here now, nobody will have remembered these things. I was just about 9, and it's not like remembering everything that happened, but life was a very different sort of world. It was like a lot of street, we played in the street a lot, but it was, my memory is at 4:30 at night, and that seems to be amazing when I look around now. Every day at 4:30 we used to come outside the door and you'd see this guy coming along lighting the street lamps, and that was up until I was 10, Jack, no electric light in the streets. He used to come along with a lamp lighter, that's what it's called. I finished the month. You could believe that. And that's I can't remember much being more than that. It was about 9. And the following year was the year that it became very, very vivid, because I guess it was a big occasion. I was about 10 then, and we went to school, and the people that I suppose connected with the council, my mother had said that we were going to have electric light, and up to then we had what you now call wall lights. We had them then, so there's nothing new under the sun. Little lamps on the wall, but my father would light them as the lamp lighter did the street lights. Took a match to the mantle and lit. We had gas light. You read these films, see this film, yeah. And that's how we like gas light. So you could imagine kids that had never known anything but gaslight didn't know what electric light was. You can't imagine that, can you?
No.
Magic. And Ida and I came back first, and it's laughable really. And they couldn't put it in all the rooms. We put it in the kitchen and the living room, and did their bedrooms later. We had candles to go to bed in the bedrooms. I used to read by candlelight. And we came home, and it was all done, and it was just, doesn't it sound silly, magic? We stood on the chair, and I was loath to tell you because it's so silly, taking it in turns to switch it on. Look at this magical thing. That's how far I remember.
How old were you?
That's how far we've gone. I remember saying, well, you did it last, to watch, it's unbelievable. In how many years? I was 10, and I'm 86, so 76 years ago. We were gazing in 1928.
Yeah.
We were gazing in wonder that you could put a switch on and get light. That's a big memory. And I was just saying that. And after that really, life went on a bit, and leaving school, and coming up to about 15, I can remember very colourful in London, because when I look back on it, you buy pictures sometimes. In fact, I've got 2 in the hall called London Cries. It was part of our daily life. And it was, when you think back, we didn't have a great deal, but that was so exciting. Every day there'd be another kind of cart coming along. Would be vegetables, milk, muffins. The chap with the muffins had a big thing on his head with muffins. 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon, he'd come round, and you'd go outside and get and there'd be fish, and it was like a market in the street all day long. Imagine that in Tower Head Road or in Sandford.
What streets are these?
The streets, any streets in London. It was it was just what happened. They had street life, It was like they'd come round and sell things in the street, all sorts of things. One man used to come round singing. I never knew what he was selling them, buying them for. And they called him the Rag and Bone Man. He used to come asked for old rags and bones. I only read the other day the bones, I meant the animal bones, I imagine. But the rags were too, I don't know what they recycled them, I suppose. It's like an early kind of recycling, really.
Yeah.
Strange when you think. And I was saying to Philip, that seemed very, it was a very sort of simple, there was no complications. You came home from school at 4:30, the lamplighter would light the light, there'd be no, another thing that stands out in my mind is there was absolutely the idea of having a radio. I do wonder what we did sometimes. My brother, being 15 years older, I thought he was very clever at 25, built a crystal set. We used to sit around this crystal set. Have you seen one?
No, I don't think so.
I can't even tell you that's how thick I am, I don't even know. And you'd have earphones on. It was the early kind of radio.
Right.
And anybody other than me would know. And he'd touch this crystal with a wire. And we'd all sit there, we're all younger than him. We'd have these earphones on in turn, and you'd hear a voice. I don't know, it was somewhere or other. And magic, we'd just hear this voice from. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Early radio. He knew. He was 20. He obviously knew. We just thought it was magical just to be able to put these things on and to hear. Imagine if you think about a world with no radio.
Mm.
You can't picture it, can you? Not television, no radio. That up to DVD. And that was the first time, and then it seemed to come very quickly, a bit of posterity. Because when I was about 15, we had a radio. But again, not a radio that you switch on. We had to take an accumulator, don't ask what an accumulator is, to this shop to be recharged. And it had liquid in it.
Yeah.
You don't question these things when you're young, do you? Hated to be sent to the shop because it terrified me. Go to the oil shop on the corner and come back and fix this, like whatever an accumulator is, you might find that out. And that would charge it.
Right.
And we had a radio then. Can't remember not earphones. It came through obviously a speaker of some sort. And then the next step on that was when we had a radio that you could turn on, plug in, and that was almost like wizard stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So those things, I think, kind of took all those years up. If I think back on it, the war came in the middle of all that, Jack, and it came rather too quickly because I was 16, I left school, and I was about 18, I think, when it became apparent. I don't remember being aware of it, but I met Pop then. He was like 19 or 20, and you were young, weren't you? And the papers were full of all this about. I don't think I ever thought it was going to happen, but it was enough to kind of worry my mother, which were the 50-year-olds. I suppose we didn't take it in much at 20. That Hitler was. They used to call it war clouds are gathering in Europe on all the papers. I met Pop, and I was young, getting on with life, and he played cricket for the post office. He was 20. He was 21 in 1938-ish. And when the war came, I was 21. He was like 23. And in 38, we were sure then they came round to the houses and issued gas masks and started getting a bit concerned then. I was like 21 then, I suppose. Yeah, no, 1938. They issued us with gas masks, and it's funny how you forget. And maybe when you were young, I think it was a bit scary, I think.
Yeah.
But I got more scared when I saw the babies run. I remember they had these very big. You put the baby inside it. That was when it started to become. So that year was a bit dodgy, 1938 to 1939, because then Pop was like 22. It was obvious he was going to have to be called up.
Yeah.
But in 1938, we knew then it was not possible to be avoided, because they then formed a militia and called up all the boys that were 18. Awful, you think. And Doug Poynter, that's the young one, from New Zealand.
How many Pointers were in your family? How many brothers and sisters?
Doug,
From the oldest to
Doug
the
was the youngest.
Right.
Pop was the next. George was the next, and
Right.
Fred was the oldest. Fred, George, Sid, and Doug. They were the 4 boys.
Okay.
And Doug was the youngest, so he was 18. They took the 18-year-olds first, so he went before the older ones.
Right.
Why they took the 18, just called up in the infantry. So he went in 1938. By the time the war was declared, he was, well, we knew then they'd started taking them age groups. And I think Pop was kind of referred a bit because he was in the post office. They reckoned it was a bit more essential. And he was already had done a Morse course. They did in those days. And
Morse
so,
code.
Morse code.
Yeah.
And so in 1939, the war then was declared. Doug had done a year then. And yeah, it's funny. My first war memory is on the day it was declared. It was Sunday the 3rd, and we were all sitting in my mother's kitchen, and Chamberlain was going to, by then we'd got a proper radio. It was a bit sort of worrying, but it was it's funny on reflection.
Yeah.
What idea did you have about war? You'd never been, my mother was 50, so she remembered the First World War, but that was a battlefield war.
Yeah.
Didn't touch the population, so it was new to everybody. I mean, Mother, they just knew a little bit. I think they had a couple of Zeppelin raids, but it was not wholesale bombing.
Yeah.
So you had that fear, you had an idea. And Pop used to come down on a Sunday. What was it, 21 I was? 20, yeah, he was 23. We'd go out perhaps and he'd go back to his own home for lunch. We only lived about 4 streets away. And my dad said I think it's going to be it. And we all sat round and listened to this, and Chamberlain did that famous speech. A bit chilling when he said, you're sitting there and you think, God, he said that, therefore this country's at war with Germany. What do you expect? You have never, it's the first time, isn't it? Don't have a clue. So we're all in the kitchen, and immediately he finished, the air raid warning went. Now we were given, there was practice days just before. They would say on Sunday, we're going to, so you recognise it. And the warning was that interrupted sound, and the all clear was straightforward. The warning was like, and the all clear was straight. So you were given a couple of, I think it was about some month before, it began to get frightening then, so you'd recognise, and posters were going up, careless not talk costs lives, so they built you up to a bit of and dig for victory. If you'd got anything in your garden space to dig your own vegetables, they dug up the Grange Park and gave people patches, and then posters everywhere, pointing to careless talk costs lives. And this warning went. Now what do? We don't, as far as we were concerned, there could be a host of German bombers overhead. That was my first wartime experience, and it's quite serious, Joe. What do you know? What would you do? You haven't a clue. You've never experienced a war. And you're told this is what happens when enemy aircraft approach, and you hear the werewolf warning. You also don't know about gas, but you've been given gas masks. And it's odd, on reflection, it is funny. And it wasn't funny at the time, but we did laugh afterwards. So we did what all human beings did. We kind of acted instinctively. I lived in a house with a downstairs. We just sat out in the hallway, all of us. It sounds funny, with these gas masks ready, and actually remember us. I mean, not older people, my age group. How did you know they're going to drop gas? That was the most peculiar thing that when it started. I hadn't got a clue, and then within about 10 minutes the all clear went. That was the first air raid warning. And then we put the radio on, and it was an unidentified plane that had been spotted, and I suppose they couldn't take chances, could they?
Yeah.
And so that was the first time we'd ever, and I remember when that air raid warning went, this sticks out in my mind. It could have been anything, I know it doesn't sound much, but it could have been anything, could have been, bless his heart really. I was there with my mother and my father, and his mother was on her own, and he said, I've got to go back. And I thought that took some doing, through about 10 minutes walk. Yeah, the warning was there. Anything could have happened. The skies could have opened. But he walked back. I'll never forget that.
I am speaking to you from the Cabinet Room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.